not ready to go it alone. Democratic Senator Joe Manchin not willing to jump on board with Dems. And tonight, Manchin is the one with the power, holding Biden's agenda in his hands. And he's not on board with Democrats passing the infrastructure bill with no Republican support. Just listen to Manchin, who just spoke out to our Manu Raju.
We need to do something in a bipartisan way. We can't continue on these types of projects because we were able to bring everything to fruition working through a bipartisan way. The Republicans didn't get everything they wanted the last time, as you recall. And basically, we're not going to get everything, but we can move forward. And the president has that desire and the urgency to get something big done.
You're not ready to go for Democrats to do this alone on reconciliation right now.
I've always been to the point where we've got to work together. You know, you can only do so much by yourself. And that's what we're not designed to work that way. The House is. The House was designed strictly for what they do. It comes hard at you, whether it's Republicans in control or Democrats. The Senate was never designed that way. The Senate was designed for, okay, I see that right there, but we can, you know, we can maneuver that a little bit and we can massage it a little bit and make it a little bit better.
Manchin is completely at odds with...
Joe Manchin is literally redefining what his role in the Senate is. The Senate is to literally place a cap on the representation from each state so that the upper chamber of, and obviously, like, for all intents and purposes, that's not what the Senate is intended to do. The Senate is meant to control the levers of power that are not proportionate to the population in a given state, right? It is incredibly anti-democratic, and that is the reason why there's the power dynamic of the Senate and the power that it has over the House, where it does have the final say. That allows the House to go crazy in its policy prescriptions or its legislative action that will then come to a screeching halt, right? Based on the design of Senate that tends to be a 50-50 split, right? And only a small, margin of power given to one party. I mean, think about right now, the Democrats literally only have control of the Senate when Kamala Harris and Democrats vote in favor of the Democratic Party's agenda. That is such a slim, a razor-thin margin to have in the Senate, right? So Joe Manchin tried to make it seem like, well, it would just be too fair for the Democrats to take advantage of the way that Senate was built to give one party the advantage to pass legislation during any given election cycle. I guess I'm gonna be the person who represents the interests of the Republican Party. That's not how the Senate works! That is not, you're making that how the Senate works. Like, you are being that person who is deciding to vote on behalf of the Republican Party, to break away with your own party because you feel like it's just not fair that the Democrats have control of the Senate and the House, and look, they can pass legislation. As if that's not what the Republicans do whenever they have control of either chamber of Congress, or whenever there is a, Republican-led state legislature. They take advantage of that power. They don't give a fuck whether or not the Democrats are represented or their interests are heard in our policy negotiations. Like, Republicans don't care. They take full-blown advantage of the power that they have when they have it. I don't know why. I don't know why Manchin is all of a sudden trying to rewrite the rules of Senate. Just be honest. You don't support some of the progressive actions taken by some members of Congress right now. Yes, you are screaming into the void. I'm screaming into the void. Roy James, thank you for gifting a tier 1 sub to Tig Biddy. We're void. Is chat the void now? Well, I lost my... I am the void. I lost my train of thought. Excuse me.
With many Democrats who say they're ready to act alone if they have to. They don't care if they don't get a single Republican on board. It comes to Senator Mitch McConnell today, says he's not sure there will be a deal, which really may mean a pretty simple thing, which is that the only way Democrats can actually pass this major legislation is to do it alone, to push it through reconciliation, which would require only a simple majority.
If it's not sold to the Republicans, will you do it without them?
We have no choice but to move forward.
If Republicans want to come on board seriously, great. If not, we're going to do it alone.
I think we are getting pretty close to a Fisher cut bait moment.
Manchin, just not there. He's saying it's got to be bipartisan. And right now, that is what power looks like. In response,
I need to know I need somebody fucking Jamie, pull up the tapes and tell us when a single Republican during a cycle in which Republicans held control over both chambers of Congress did what Joe Manchin did and asked, but what about the Democrats? Talked about bipartisanship, talked about compromise, talking about kneecapping themselves. No. Republicans vilify Democrats at every turn. Republicans not only say we don't give a fuck about what the Democrats say, they motherfuck the Democrats and they make them out to be the demons in the conversation. And the reason as to why they will not include Democrats in their legislative proposals. They know how. They know how to vilify the Democratic Party. It helps pave the way for their own legislative action. Republicans do not care about bipartisanship. They don't care about compromise. Demon rats, brother. I need to know if you're leaving right now. You better say so. Huh?
Biden has offered to slash the price tag of the bill by nearly half, from $1.7 trillion to $1 trillion. It wasn't Republicans that got him to do that. It was Manchin's stance here. Manchin has also made it clear he's against paying for the infrastructure bill by hiking the corporate tax rate to 28%, as Democrats want. This is what power looks like, because today CNN is learning that President Biden is now trying to find a way to pay for his plan without raising corporate taxes. This is power. And this power goes beyond infrastructure. Biden needs Manchin on board for his other priorities, including a massive bill on voting rights. That will require Manchin to go along with eliminating the
Jay,
filibuster.
thank you for resubscribing 19 months
in
in a row.
Been clear on. He just told our Manu Raju he is unwilling to bend on that.
And you've been very clear about your desire for the Senate.
No, I'm still very clear about that.
And could you just just take it off the table and say you'll never reduce the 60 vote threshold on the filibuster?
Let me just tell you one thing. We're going to make the Senate work the way it was intended to work. I'm totally committed to that. And I'm not throwing caution to the wind. I have never desired to do that. I've listened to everybody's point of view. But the bottom line is, this country has got to unite it. We can't divide it.
Not going to get rid of the filibuster. A no-go on what Democrats are now, in chorus wanting to happen. Can't happen if he's not on board with it. All of it leading Biden earlier this week in frustration to single Manchin out, along with another Democratic senator who often stands with Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema.
I hear all the folks on TV saying, why doesn't Biden get this done? Well, because Biden only has a majority of effectively 4 votes in the House and a tie in the Senate, with 2 members of the Senate who vote more with my Republican friends.
Well, that's not actually accurate. Biden is wrong about that final point there. Manchin and Sinema have voted with the Democrats most of the time. But the bottom line is this. If I've got the power. You
All right,
heard
thanks,
Manchin's
Aaron
comments
Burnett.
tonight. Frustrating a lot of Democrats. Manu Raju is out front tonight in Morgantown, West Virginia, where you just saw him speaking to Senator Manchin. Jeff Zeleny is out front live in Washington. Manu, let me just start with you since you had a chance to speak to Senator Manchin. What more did he tell you?
Well, he's making it very clear that he is not ready to buck Republicans in the 50-50 Senate. And that is so significant because getting legislation through will
Journalism is
require
dead on
either
TV.
Joe Manchin changing his position on either trying to get an infrastructure package done along straight party lines, something they can do presumably through the budget
Did you not go to
process that
school in
allows them
Morgantown?
to
No, I
avoid
did.
a
I went to school in
Republican-led
Morgantown at
filibuster.
WVU.
He is not ready to do that. He says talks need to continue. They've been going on for months. A lot of Democrats say, let's give up. He also is not ready to abandon the filibuster to get a major voting legislation through the Senate. He opposes the Democratic plan, but he also is working on a narrower piece of legislation aimed to bolster voting rights and access. But even if 10 Republicans don't agree with that, he is not on board with the idea of changing the filibuster rules.
Who is
to
running
allow
against
that voting
Manchin?
legislation to
Manchin isn't up for re-election until 2024. So, who knows? Who knows who's going to prop up and try to primary him or run against him? Paula Jean? I hope Paula Jean sticks with it. I would love it. You? Fuck no. No.
move forward. But he made clear that he's willing, wants both two sides to work together. The question is, will he change his mind? He's making it clear he's not.
You're making it very clear in his interview with you.
Evidence do you have that Mitch McConnell wants to work with you? Last week he blocked a commission bill, and he could have. And you saying that he wants to work with you?
He's dead either. I'm not saying that one's dead either. You know, I was very disappointed. I think it was wrong what he did, and I've said that. He knows how I feel about that. And they looked at it truly as a political. I did not look at political from that standpoint. I looked at our country coming back together. It was totally everything they asked for. It was totally bipartisan. I think Nancy Pelosi was very gracious in what she had offered, basically making it totally bipartisan. Chuck Schumer said, okay, I'll do the same. They were able to come to a disagreement. They were able to have the same staffing levels. Everything was done in the most bipartisan way. And for him...
They blocked it because of the filibuster.
Well, one person blocked it on that. But the bottom line is we have 7 people, 6 that voted.
Run as a Trump Republicans and beat him, then you switch. Run as a Trump Republican and beat him, then switch. Yeah. Pull a Jim Justice. Pull a Jim Justice. Jim Justice is the current governor of West Virginia. He ran as a Democrat, and then as soon as Trump was elected, he was like, actually, I'm a Trump Republican. Just kidding.
So you can say you'll never reduce the 60-vote threshold.
Basically, we're going to make the place work. We're going to make the place.
You're not taking that off the table then.
We're making it work. We're going to make the place work.
You're not reducing the 60-vote threshold off the table.
No. We're going to make the place work. I don't know what else I can tell you. And you can't make it work unless the minority has input. You can't disregard.
No, you can. You absolutely can. You absolutely can. You want to know why, Joe Manchin? Because you have been in the Senate for how long? You have been in the Senate during a time in which you and your party was the minority. And please try to think back at that time, Joe Manchin, and think about and consider whether or not Republicans ever gave a shit about your inputs, ever compromised with you, or ever took into consideration that you were still a major proponent of this legislative chamber, this legislative body, and whether or not they really tried to work with you when they were in positions of power to get their legislative action passed with flying color. The answer is no. It might be because they're probably, let's see, Joe Manchin became senator when Byrd died, and then you had that interim 2010, 11 years now. Joe Manchin might not have ever been in the Senate when one party had control over both chambers of Congress and the White House. But still, it doesn't matter. it's still an awful position to argue from. Needing to be the centrist in this equation. Because it's just too fair that his party has all of the power right now.
That way. And I've said this, if you want to know the workings of the Senate, why do we have 2 senators for every state? Small and large. What did our founding fathers, what are they thinking of? They wanted the participation for the smaller, the minority. And a state back then of Delaware or Rhode Island was a very small state compared to New York and Virginia. So he wanted that input, and we want that input. We'll make it work.
I know you're got to go in 1 second, but you're also just in the center of so many issues in Washington.
Yeah. So again, Joe Manchin over here talking about the reason for the Senate existing was to not give too much power to the populous states that would have more people, more representation, even the playing field of the smaller states, so the interests of the smaller states don't fall by the wayside when it comes to our form of governance. That's not the same thing. That's not the same thing as Joe Manchin right now literally being a Republican apologist. Because right now, the Democratic Party just has all of this power that they've amassed and accumulated because people voted for them. The people voted for Joe Biden. The people voted for the majority of House members to be Democrats. And we ended up pulling the Senate as well. Because of the Georgia runoff elections. And now all of a sudden, Joe Manchin is literally sympathizing with the Republican Party because they just don't have any power. They've been stripped of their power. They don't have any say. They don't have any input in our legislative action. And that's where he is coming from right now. Siding with the Republican Party because the Republicans are not getting behind any of these sweeping legislative bills. To democratize our democracy. And so on and so on. Sorry, democratize our democracy. That little shit-eating grin on his face is the worst.
And one of the issues is you're working on trying to get a voting rights bill passed with Lisa Murkowski. You're working. Let me finish the question. There's no sign that there's actually going to be 60 votes to get that done. Some of your Democratic colleagues say Joe Manchin should agree for an exemption, allow voting rights to pass on a simple majority, change the Senate's filibuster rules to do that. Would you be open to that?
I asked everybody, how well did the 2013 nuclear option work when in 2017?
He's grandpa for the monsters.
That's all. What goes around comes around. So let's work together. Let's find a pathway forward.
So you wouldn't do that, an exemption.
Find a pathway forward.
Last question. Joe Biden this week, he said that you vote more with Republicans than Democrats.
I don't think. I think that's taken totally out of content. I spoke to the White House. I think that was totally out of content.
So that key point there, he's saying that what comes around goes around. That is the warning that he has been giving to the left for months, saying that if we do change the filibuster rules, ultimately Republicans will be back in the majority, and then they will do whatever they want, which is why
they'll do whatever they want anyway. They'll do whatever they want anyway. Joe Manchin right now being like, we best not poke the Republican bear right now. If we don't try to consider them right now whenever we are making legislative changes, who knows how far right they will move in the time that they consolidate power in the way that we consolidate power. Which is why you should be trying to push as far left as possible during the time that you have or your party has power, if you know the extent to which Republicans will utilize their power if they were in a similar position. It's like trying to appease the Republicans who know no bounds in their legislative prescriptions and their desire to move as far right as possible. And thinking that somehow the best solution to this is to try to compromise with them, to try to appeal to them, to make them happy, knowing full well that when they are in the same position, it's no holds bar. They don't have any desire to compromise. They do not have any interest in bipartisanship. That is completely against their legislative agenda. Horsey's dead? Been dead for a while now? Alexandros. True. Okay. I just wanted to make that point. That whole what goes around comes around thing. What could that mean?
But of course, that means, Aaron, that Joe Biden's agenda hinges on the support of one man. And one man is saying, work with the Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, it is incredible, and incredible to hear him stand up, not backing down there in his conversation with you, Manu. Incredible, like getting the price tag cut in half to try to get him on board. All right, thank you very much, Manu. So I want to go now to the White House and Jeff Zeleny. So Jeff, Senator Manchin speaks and the White House listens. How closely are they watching Senator Manchin's every word right now?
They're watching him very closely, but President Biden perhaps the closest of all. But one thing is key. President Biden would likely have not been surprised by anything that we just heard from Senator Manchin, because he knows that this is part of the process, and they have to run out the full tape here. They have to actually try to get a bipartisan agreement. This is not for show. This is not political theater. This is not some running out the clock. This is what is key to try to get the infrastructure bill right now that's on the table passed. That's why Shelley Moore Capito, the Republican senator from West Virginia, coming back to the White House to have a phone call tomorrow with the president. We'll see how serious they are on negotiating, but this is something that they need to play out. Now, we heard Senator Manchin leave the possibility open for, what happens if negotiations completely fail. So we don't know that. And he does generally vote with this White House. But the reality is Democratic senators and Democrats across Washington can, be angry. They can be fuming. They can be furious at Senator Manchin. But the reality is that's who they have. Without him, they would have 49 senators, and this would be an entirely different conversation. So they should have won more seats in other races last year if they wanted to avoid this problem. But
for fuck's sake!
But the relationship, Aaron,
What is this? Well, you knew that Joe Manchin was going to be problematic. Hasn't he always poised himself to be the swing voter in the Senate? Maybe the Democrats should have thought of that and worked to win an extra seats in the Senate to make up for the fact that what we already knew to be true, and that is that Joe Manchin's kind of like a Republican whenever it comes down to it sometimes. Did I miss the meme segment? Yeah. What? Democrats, you really should have thought about that. You really should have thought about trying to secure a more Democratic-y seats whenever you had a chance in the 2020 election. Liberals like Manchin? Bullshit. Not even liberals. Listen, whenever I was a stone cold fucking liberal, not even I liked Joe Manchin, okay? That's telling you something. It sucks that people in Georgia did all of that work to create a tie-break majority in the Senate just for Joe to Joe. Yeah. I love Joe Manchin. Stone cold. Now I'm a stone cold data girl. Joe Lieberman or Joe Manchin, which is worse? Stone cold leftist data girl. Data woman. Thank you, Wake. You're right. No, there are a lot of liberals who like super moderate Dems. They're mostly 40 plus years old, though. No, I think that a lot of centrists like super moderate Dems. I think that it's a lot of registered Democrats who are centrists. who maybe vote Democrat because they're more socially progressive, right? But I do not know a single liberal. And again, I used to be a liberal, a dumb liberal, and not even I could stand Joe Manchin. The kind of people that like Joe Manchin are the ones that the Democrats go after during elections, the sometimes Republican... Yeah, the centrists. The centrists. The moderates. The swing voters. Yeah. Liberals are centrists, yes, but then centrists are 100% Republicans. Whenever you think about it. No, it's just because the Overton window, again, it goes back to the Overton window. Our politics have pushed so far to the right that even moderates are supporting conservative ideology far more than they are, because that's where the center is right now. It very much encapsulates conservative ideology, absolutely fiscal conservative policies, and regressive social conditioning that we have become accustomed to. And that's the reason why a radical approach to undoing the heteronormativity, the social conditioning, the right-wing ideology, the conservative project that has been foundational to our way of governing is so incredibly important. So whenever you hear somebody like me, like a dumbass from like 3 years ago, say like, oh, this seems too far left, it's usually because they have failed to understand the deep-seated history of right-wing conservative ideology that makes up the bulk of all things political in this country. Liberals are usually economically conservative but socially progressive. Yeah. Carmen, thank you so much. I think that liberals are usually economically conservative because they benefit from capitalism. They benefit from capitalism. And capitalism is inherently conservative, right? It is these are conservative principles. Classical economists have always been incredibly conservative in nature. That is the cornerstone from which our capitalist system really started to thrive, right? In little to no regulation over our capitalist enterprises, a top-down approach in our way of creating businesses, right? More like an authoritarian regime than anything resembling democratic functioning in our places of employment, right? Free market capitalism obviously is incredibly conservative, right-wing ideology too, whenever you think about the relationship between our government and our capitalist system, right, in the way that it functions. Capitalism is just neo-feudalism. We keep on throwing around neo-feudalism. And yes, it's understanding capitalism and understanding the roots of capitalism, which is inherently conservative. That's where I think liberals tend to not understand that, yeah, of course, when it comes to things that are in your face and things that you understand that are, you know, social issues that you can automatically see an issue with. And of course, you're going to understand that Black Lives Matter. Of course, you're going to believe that marriage equality is important. Of course, you're going to be in favor of these social changes for the better that leads to, you know, that leads to the liberation of historically marginalized and oppressed groups. And yet you still favor capitalism because if you are a liberal and you are a privileged person in this country, then you most likely benefit from capitalism in a way that makes you favor capitalism because you might understand the socio-economic implications of our hierarchy and where you fall, and knowing that things could be much worse for you and understanding and appreciate what a capitalist system and your privileges have done for you. That is the cognitive dissonance that liberals fall victim to because they understand or they are acutely aware of their privilege and they don't want to see themselves with the same economic wealth or conditions as those who fall beneath them, that they might be in favor of uplifting, right, or liberating, but not at their expense of making changes to the system that could otherwise hurt their wealth or make changes to their material wealth, because they also don't understand how we can, or maybe they haven't been able to enrich themselves with the knowledge of how a more socialized economy could benefit everyone, including themselves, if we were to make that transition, right? Because a lot of liberals also are victims of Red Scare tactics, where they think, oh, communism, I'm going to lose my material wealth. I'm going to have the same material wealth as those who fall beneath me on the social hierarchy. And I don't really know if I want this, but I definitely can say that I am in support of major changes that would, liberate some of the most vulnerable people in this country, as long as my wealth, right, my material conditions are in no way, shape, or forms, tampered with, if you will. Look who's back.